Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the Nine Realms. This will be a series of lore-related videos that will cover elements regarding the Age of Sigmar and its elements. Naturally, for such a series, we couldn't begin with any other way than with the man himself, Sigmar Heldenhammer, the God King, Sigmar the Traitor, and whichever the name is your favorite. So let's begin from the get-go. First thing first is the end times, the end of the world that was the old Warhammer world. To begin with, you have Archaon battling Sigmar for the hammer itself, Galmaras. Now, how did it get to that point? Sigmar, prior to ascending to a god proper in the age of Sigmar, suffice to say, had been binded already to the wind of Azir, the wind of heavens. This had trapped him for millennia, and had remained so until the end times, when Nagash and other mages had caused the unraveling of the winds. Sigmar then possessed Calfrance. The rest is history. They battled together, they fell into the abyss, and Sigmar himself was left astray, wandering through the void for a few hundred years. So what happens during this period? During this period, the old world is destroyed and the souls are scattered. Sigmar himself, as I said already, was sent flying away into the void. He finds then Dracothian. Dracothian, to those not familiar, is the celestial drake, the father or mother, I'm not sure now of this gender, of all the star drakes, and is an extremely ancient being, as in he was the creator of the old Warhammer world, is the creator of the current setting, and had created the worlds prior to both of them. Dracothian had been in charge of remaking every time the world once the Chaos Gods destroyed it. For him, such triviality was an outpoint. But this time was a bit different, because Sigmar, who would become one of the new gods, befriended him. So what consisted of this? Basically, Sigmar went and gave him a trinket, a collar, from the remains of Malus, which was the chunk of rock he was floating in. Dracothian liked the gesture and said he would become friends with him. Thus, Sigmar entered contact with the Nine Realms. Yes, this is something we have to take into consideration. Sigmar isn't the creator god. He didn't create the realms. This is a bit similar, if you ask me, to Norse mythology or even Greek mythology, where the current god that is subject isn't outright responsible for the world. More to that later. So he goes and finds the realms. He knows that souls are starting to repopulate it. He sees that life blooms again. So what he settles to do? He tries to rebuild civilization. He tries to gather the remnants of the old world. For this, Sigmar sets on a quest for the other incarnates. Each incarnate was binded to a wind of magic. Sigmar takes around a century finding the individuals. On Shish, the realm of death, he finds Nagash and somehow manages to convince him. Ulgu, Shish, Hish, and Gyron, the realms of shadow, light, and life, are a more easier matter, as the gods are more cooperative. As the last of the gods, if I recall properly, is Gork. This is something curious in Sigmar, because he tries to make a deal with the Greenskins. Sigmar is stated in the books to have gone and flown into the realm of Gord, realm of beasts, to find Gork. He there finds the twin-headed god trapped by one god beast. God beasts being massive entities gargantuan beings whose name really warrants a qualificative of war god, trust me. So, what happens? Sigmar battles the god beast that had trapped Gorka Morka. Let me remember the name. Dracatoa. So once he fights this beast, Gorka Morka is equally happy and angered. Happy for being rescued, angered for being rescued, of course. So what happens? The gods enter into a strife, a combat, dueling for day and night, forming mountains and valleys with their strikes. The last strike of this confrontation had such tremendous power that the realms trembled. This is something huge, if you ask me, because the realms are very similar to the 9 realms of the Norse mythology. More to that on another video, though. So with this, we finally get the pantheon: Teclis, Tyrion, Malarion, Alariel, Nagash, Grungi, Grimnir, and Gorka Morka. Wait, I'm saying it right, yes. These 9 gods, alongside counting Sigmar of course, would become the pantheon of Order. Many other lesser gods would be considered relevant, but these 9, the 8 incarnates plus Teclis, who had become a satellite being to his brother, would become the rulers of all, and Sigmar would sit at its highest. During this time, Sigmar had been a really light-limbed monarch, because technology and acceptance and tolerance flourished in his realm, as here is described as having orcs, vampires, humans, dwarfs, and elves. Of course, if you want to use the current names, or adding orcs and the like, but just for clarity. This comes to last around a millennia, more or less, give or take. During this time, though, the forces of chaos resurge. Archaon leads again the forces of the 4 chaos gods, and thus begins yet another war. These are Realm Gate Wars, which happen at the very sunset of the golden age of the pantheon of Odin, the so-called Age of Myth, and during the first half of the Age of Chaos, more or less. As the authors haven't given us a very exact timeline, but coupling the things together, we more or less can get a picture on it. So, during this time, Sigmar battles the forces of chaos. His pantheon is shattered bit by bit. First, Grimnir lives to fight Volcatrix, only to die. Second, the elven gods abandon Sigmar to fight Slanesh and save the race, because they had been trapped. This point is important because the war had started going well. They kept the forces of chaos at bay and managed to counterattack them, to keep the line and their domains. But as gods start abandoning them, the things go south. With the abandoning of Grimnir, the elven gods, and Gorka Morka, the forces of the pantheon are unable to control the invasion of chaos. So Sigmar at this period is still trying to keep the gods together, to keep this great alliance going on. And so is, curiously enough, Nagash. The god himself is a curious case because Nagash is portrayed as a traitor, but all the 8 other gods had previously abandoned it already. Grimnir had died, Grungi had hidden, Alariel had done so too, the other 3 elven gods had left to fight Slanesh, Gorka Morka had gone to do fuck all, but Nagash hadn't. And this is something interesting enough, because it seems that the god of death and the god of order had gone and struck an agreement, a balance of sorts. And this this serves also something interesting too. I'll lay upon it a bit later. So what goes on? The forces of Nagash and Sigmar fight solo the forces of Chaos during the Battle of the Algates, which is the nexus of all the realms. Think of it as the central elevator or realm of sorts. Okay, during the Battle of the Algates, Dinch tricks Nagash. This is something that we should have seen coming, that the Great Deceiver will deceive someone. But the effects are very damaging, because in what consisted the trick? Basically, the trick consisted in making Nagash think Sigmar was betraying him, and at the same time make Sigmar think that Nagash was betraying him. Thus, their bondship will break. Sigmar had come to value Nagash as a friend, because they had established a good relationship, as it's seen in the short story Pantheon. They maybe weren't best friends of life, but they had common respect and come to a respect for each other. Thus the betrayal drove Sigmar into great anger, because it was not only that an ally had betrayed him, but a friend had broken his promise. This is again laid upon in the novel Pantheon, in the short story Pantheon. Sigmar viewed all the 8 gods, even Gorka, Morka and Nagash, as friends. This is certainly curious, because he had spent his life prior to this fighting Nagash and the orcs. More to that later on, at the finale. So the alliance is broken. Sigmar cannot hold anymore. He battles Nagash as a retaliation for breaking the alliance, and during this short period of time, the forces of Chaos begin overrunning the realms. Sigmar, knowing he cannot win, and that his friends and allies aren't being cooperative about the matter, he decides to retire to Azir. During this period of time, the forces of Chaos keep at it, conquering territory and land. Archaon, during one of these battles of the retreat, taunts Sigmar into throwing his hammer Galmaras, at Archaon. So what happens? Archaon opens a warp rift, and this causes Galmorath to disappear. Without his weapon, Sigmar fully understands that there's no chance of victory currently. He sees that his men, mortal as they are no match for the Chaos Warriors, and thus he orders retreat. Again, a definite retreat, as in not we are retreating to a more defensible position, but we are going to close the gates. Thus a great exodus begins into the city of Azirheim. Azirheim was the second biggest city in the realm of Azir. It was only surpassed by the city of Heilheim, where the gods had originally taken seat. Now, with the war and the shattering of the Pantheon, Heilheim had become depopulated. Thus, Azir was the de facto capital and last bastion of Sigmar. There, Sigmar had asked the elven gods to help him raise a massive wall. These bastions would keep away Zinj and all the forces of Chaos from invading. Gwangi and his smiths worked day and night to make this possible, while the elven gods cast their magic. During this time, Sigmar purged the city from Greenskin and Undead, because they had betrayed the alliance in the most gruesome way of all. He had a heart and was able to forgive, but he didn't believe in third chances. And Sigmar is portrayed as a rather benevolent but at the same time ruthless sovereign. He's a great contrast with the Emperor. As your family with a Horus heresy, you'll see the Emperor, while had a good idea, was very callous about things. For example, he builds his sons and primarchs as disposable tools. Sigmar, curiously enough, is shown consistently in the novels that he wants to forgive. He wants to forge alliances and friendships, as seen with his embassies to Nagash and Gorka Morka during the Realmgate Wars, and as is seen during the Realmgate Wars. More or less during the early stages of the wars, not when he decided to close the Realmgate. Now, Sigmar may be benevolent, but he's also ruthless. For example, when the gates of Athis were closing, thousands of people were still flocking in. Knowing that the forces of chaos were in the vicinity, Sigmar ordered the premature closing of the gates. This way, literally hundreds or thousands of individuals were trapped and were left to the devices of the forces of chaos. During this time, the council of members of Aesir was debating Arquin without reaching to an agreement on what to do next. Sigmar, who didn't want them bickering and lose time, proceeded to burn them alive with the lightning. Thus we have a very dual image. On one side we have the man who says, let's be friends, let's forgive each other and be trustworthy. This again is shown in his offers of friendship on the gods, his moment in Pantheon where he asks forgiveness to Alariel for his misbehaviors, and when he says sorry to Tostos Bladestone during the beginning of the Realmgate Wars for having used him. But at the same time, he can also be a callous man, a man that is vengeful, as seen when he orders the pursuit of Manfred von Karstein, when he purges the people of Aesir from Greenskin and Undertale, when he burns people for being a hindrance to his project. Sigmar, if anything, is a goal-driven man. Still knows his humanity, but understands that sacrifices must be made. And thus, this is the man behind the Realmgate Wars. This is the father of the Stormcasts, which will be our focus for the next video. Hope you have enjoyed, sir, and may the war be with you during the conquest of the realms.